Canada will be self-reliant, sovereign, and stand on its own 2 feet. We will build on the great legacy and vision of John A. Macdonald of uniting our country east to west.
Well, our theory of Trump continuing to stall his tariffs was shot down today as Trump implemented sweeping tariffs on both Mexico and Canada. As a result, party leaders responded to that in various forms. But for this video, we're going to be focusing on Pierre Poilievre's response because we believe it shows the leadership that this country is desperately lacking.
Let's take a look.
At 12:01 a.m., President Trump stabbed America's best friend in the back. My message to the President is this: Canada will fight back. We will defend our people and our economy, and we will put Canada first. There's no doubt that our economy will suffer, but so will yours, President Trump. In fact, you're already paying the price, with trillions of dollars erased in stock market value over the last month of these threats. Already, Americans are paying higher gas prices, as at midnight, a new American gas tax kicked in on U.S. working-class taxpayers and motorists.
Okay, so we're right out of the gate here on this. Now, we've seen some comments, and we don't know if this is bots. We don't know if this is trolls. We don't know what this is. But there's people that are characterizing Pierre's press conference today as acting like a liberal. And frankly, I don't understand that.
I think some people will say, expect Pierre to be behaving the way he does in the House of Commons as the opposition leader. He's not, I mean, he is still the opposition leader, but he's trying to be prime minister, right? Like, that's the job he's going to be doing very shortly because, as we suspect, there's going to be an election called soon. So he doesn't want to behave adversarial and like an opposition leader. He needs to behave like a leader. He needs to prove that he's the one who's going to lead Canada out of this mess, because he's absolutely right. This is going to affect our economy very badly. So he wants to convince Canadians, all those Canadians who haven't decided what they're going to be doing with their vote yet, that he's the best person to vote for because he's the best person who can lead Canada out of this mess.
Well, and here's the other thing. There's a lot of people that are fans of Donald Trump. That's fine. You can be a fan of Donald Trump. We're not saying that you shouldn't. But the bizarre thing is that a lot of people are saying, well, Pierre should be supporting Donald Trump. And my question to them is, I don't understand that. Are you seriously suggesting that Pierre should get behind that microphone and say, yay, President Trump, tariff my country, steal my jobs, cost my economy hundreds of billions of dollars? Like, do you seriously expect him to do that?
Tariff me harder. like seriously.
Like, you can applaud Donald Trump for going after the waste in the U.S. federal government. By all means, I applaud that. You can applaud the strategy of Donald Trump that actually woke up the Liberal government in responding to the border, actually taking the drug crisis seriously, and basically kicking them in the ass. That's a good thing. However, implementing these tariffs, that's going to cost people's lives. It's going to cost their paychecks. It's going to cost them their jobs. So for people to just say, well, Pierre should just agree with everything Trump is saying, I disagree. And there's a lot of Canadians that are going to disagree across this country.
Listen, up till this point, Canada and the United States have had a very friendly relationship, especially when it comes to trade. Now you have a president coming in saying, America first. We're not going to be as friendly with our trading partners, including Canada, and we're going to put our own country first. You know what? That's his prerogative. It's his country. He's been elected to lead the United States of America, right? But at the same time, you want a Canadian leader, hopefully Pierre Poilievre, who's going to do the same thing for Canada.
And I guarantee you, folks, the business leaders and even American workers aren't too happy with Donald Trump right now. Why? Well, Pierre alluded to it. Let me show you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dow Jones Industrial. And this is the performance of the Dow Jones Industrial over the last month. That doesn't look like positive gain to me when it comes to the Dow. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. It's almost the exact same picture. So this is the value of the total stock market that is under the NASDAQ, and the previous one was under the Dow Jones Industrial. What does all of this mean? Well, what it means is that just in the last month, the total share value of the U.S. economy has dropped by $1.8 trillion.
With a T.
And that's because, primarily, of Donald Trump threatening and then implementing these tariffs. So there's a lot of money that has been lost in the United States economy. So for everybody jumping on Trump's bandwagon, there's a lot of people that voted for him that are pretty ticked at him right now. So just keep that in mind. And Trump, to Tanya's point, is trying to do what he thinks is in the best interest for America. That's his job. He was elected in America. He wasn't elected by Canadians. He doesn't care what Canadians think of him. But Pierre Poilievre does. And Pierre Poilievre actually has a plan to deal with this. And yeah, I want him to stand up to Trump. And I want him to say, up yours, this is my country. And if you come after our country, I'm going to defend it every way we can. So yeah, I expect him to stand up. I expect him to oppose Trump. And I expect him to let other nations know that we're not going to be pushed around. Because we've been pushed around by our own government for long enough.
Your workers will soon start losing jobs. Jobs they had upgrading Canadian raw materials, which, by the way, you were getting at an incredible and ridiculous bargain. And your businesses will be selling fewer products to your closest neighbor. And that's only the beginning. While Canadians are slow to anger and quick to forgive, once provoked, we fight back. And we will fight back. Now, I'd like to speak to the millions of Canadians who were anxious today after learning that President Trump has attacked our economy, to the auto workers, the forestry workers, the steel and aluminum workers, the mining and energy workers, the truckers, the farmers, to all of you who get out of bed before the sun rises and do the labor of the nation. You are afraid right now, and I understand. I want you to know that I will fight for you. I will fight for your job. I will fight for your family. I will fight for your chance at owning and paying off a home, and I will fight for your retirement. And I will fight to put Canada first. Before these tariffs came in this morning, you must have been asking yourself, how could things get any worse? Before these tariffs, you were already suffering. You wondered how you'd pay the rent or eventually dream of buying a home after housing costs had doubled over the last decade, rising faster than in any other G7 country. You've downgraded your diet as food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States over the last 5 years. You might be one of the 2 million people, a record-breaking number, lined up at food banks, a number that has more than doubled before these tariffs applied.
So, what's going on here? Well, this is Pierre not acting like a liberal. Because what the liberals would have you believe is that Canada was just tickety-boo until this morning. Canada was the envy of the world, and it's the big, mean, old orange man down south, that's what they want to say, that is causing all of this misery. And if he would just go away, and if he would just stop the tariffs, then Canada would be the oasis of the planet Earth.
Well, and the reality is, if Trump didn't put in these tariffs, the Liberals have still destroyed our economy and our way of life. I mean, think of how many tent cities are in the town or the city that you live in. How many people are homeless? How many people are addicted to narcotics? How many people are losing their lives because of those addictions? How long does it take for you to see a doctor if you're lucky enough to have one? Otherwise, you're stuck waiting in the emergency room for goodness knows how long, just so you can get maybe some antibiotics, maybe a referral to a specialist, if you're lucky. Like, our systems in this country are falling apart. Our border security, our court system. Look at, criminals are caught and then just turned right back out onto the street. How many cars in your neighborhood have been stolen in the past month? These are all questions that Canadians should be asking themselves, and we should be pointing the finger at the Liberals, because all of their policy changes have resulted in all this extra crime, this falling apart of our social programs, and this misery that we as Canadians are living in, with or without Donald Trump.
Well, and Mark Carney characterizes this: we've had a weakened economy.
Whose fault is that?
Well, but seriously, that's the way you characterize it? A weakened economy? Look at what you've done to Canada. And Mark Carney has been advising the Liberals since 2020. Like, this is not new.
He's not new to the outsider that he wishes everyone would believe that he is.
Well, and even if you believe him, then you are completely unqualified to actually come in and do anything. He hasn't talked about crime at all. He hasn't talked about drugs at all. He's barely talked about national security. He's barely talked about defense. He thinks, we're going to build an economy, despite the fact that your reviews of your job performance have been less than stellar.
He wants to put eco tariffs on any country that we import goods from that doesn't currently have a climate plan in place. And that includes some of our biggest trade partners, like the United States and China.
Now imagine that. Imagine he comes to power, and imagine, it's unlikely, imagine the Liberals win the next election, and then he puts in his carbon tax tariffs on top of the tariffs that are already in place. Are you insane? That is going to destroy Canadians' economies even more than they already are. Now, Pierre is doing what he should be here, which is saying, yes, these tariffs are terrible. But remember, things were already bad enough because of what the Liberals did to this country. Do not forget that, Canadians, as we embrace and deal with this next challenge, because we're not done with the last 10 years that the Liberals have levied upon Canada.
You've likely noticed that your paycheck is not keeping up with the record inflation, as Canada's GDP has grown less and lower than any other G7 country over the last decade. You might have noticed that your company has already been moving jobs to the United States, as greedy and self-serving CEOs put their share prices ahead of your job. And $500 billion net has left from Canada to Trump's America under the current Liberal government. And now this. But I'm here with a message of hope. We will overcome this attack on our economy, and I have a plan to do it. First, we must retaliate, targeting American goods in the following order. A, goods that we can make ourselves. B, goods we don't need. And C, goods we can get from elsewhere. Second, counter tariffs must not be a cash cow for the government. Almost every penny of the tariffs collected should go to tax cuts, with a small sum set aside for targeted relief to workers hardest hit by the trade war. None of the money should go to new government spending and programs. We must not allow politicians to dishonestly use this crisis to once again launch a debt-fueled, money-printing spending spree that will drive up inflation and further destroy the working class and hit the poorest people the hardest.
This is an excellent point, because remember, when a country puts tariffs on imported goods, it's not the country sending the goods that sees that money. It's not the manufacturer that sees that money. It's the government of that country. So if Canada were to retaliate and put tariffs on American goods, it's the Canadian government that's going to benefit.
100%. And I wouldn't trust this Liberal government or the NDP to run a bake sale for free. I wouldn't trust them. So this makes complete sense, and it allows some sort of buffer to lessen the blow of tariffs on Canadians, because you're saying, all right, I'm going to take all this money that we're getting from the tariffs and I'm going to give that back to Canadians in the form of a tax cut. That is very, very smart. So,
well, because it'll be Canadians that are affected by tariffs, right? If we are putting tariffs on American goods, then goods coming from the States to Canada that Canadians buy will be more expensive. So by decreasing the income tax of Canadians, hopefully it will offset that.
absolutely.
Third, we must immediately pass a bring it home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building. The idea is to neutralize the cost of the tariffs with lower taxes and incentivize massive new investment in building stuff here in this country. The obvious place to start is to get rid of the Liberal carbon tax, then axe the sales tax on new homes. We need to reverse the Liberal capital gains tax hike and slash income tax so that hard work pays off and you bring home more of each dollar you earn. Fourth, we must immediately repeal the Liberal No New Pipelines Law C-69, a law that not only blocks all pipelines but stops mines, refineries, export plants, and all kinds of other energy infrastructure and makes us hopelessly reliant on one customer, the Americans, a customer we cannot count on anymore. We must greenlight LNG plants that Liberals say there is no business case for, so that we can no longer have to sell our 100% of our LNG, our gas exports to the Americans. We can sell it to Asia and Europe and help break the European dependence on Putin, turning dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people. 5, you know what industry Donald Trump does not control in Canada? Home building. It is a homegrown industry. We must get rid of all taxes and red tape to unleash the biggest home building boom this country has ever seen, bigger than the post-war boom when our heroes were coming back from that war. We need to build homes faster than ever, and that means removing the bureaucracy, the red tape, the taxes, and the gatekeepers, and I will make it happen.
So there was a lot in there. Now, looks like phase 1 of his approach is stop the bleeding, which in any crisis, that's the number one thing you want to try to do. Mitigate the damage. Okay, damage has been mitigated as much as possible. Now, while that's happening, we need to then plan for the future to then further mitigate outside influence and potential damage to our economy as a result of other countries. So, he wants to completely open Canada for business from a strategic mineral point of view, from an energy point of view, and we need to get those pipelines built so we can actually transport that. The trouble with the pipelines is it takes a long time to build them. So the sooner you start, the better it's going to be for Canada. Some of these pipelines may not be done for like a decade or more.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a long, long time to build them. So we better get our act together and get started. That's the whole point here. Get these gas plants done. There's a business case. We've seen the business case. There's a whole bunch of countries in Europe that would salivate over our LNG. Let's get her done. And as for the homes, I don't disagree. Homes take a horrendously long time to build. If you reduce all of the taxes, reduce all the permit fees, and you reduce the time that it actually takes to get these homes built, then yeah, you're going to be able to build more homes faster, and you're going to increase the amount of jobs that are going to be needed to build these homes, thereby putting more money in Canadians' pockets and allowing housing prices to at least stabilize so they don't go up so fast as they have been over the last few years. So so far it's a pretty good plan. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's a lot better than what we have now.
That will also boost the demand for softwood lumber. The loggers are suffering after Biden hit them with tariffs already. And 6, let's get our provinces together to knock down trade barriers so that we can lower prices and boost wages for our people. 7, we must secure our borders and rebuild our military to assert our sovereignty and strength in the world.
Now, I wonder if this is where people are saying that Pierre sounds like a liberal, because the liberals keep stealing his talking points.
They do.
Like, Pierre has been saying, we need to be eliminating the interprovincial trade barriers. And then the liberals pick that up, and then people are accusing Pierre of stealing the liberal talking points. Like, you know, for those that were frustrated, and I understand that you were, about why Pierre hadn't really been specific about a lot of his policies leading up to now, like all last year, this is why.
Well, and I suppose it begs the question that why is he giving away his policies now?
Well, obviously there's an election coming. So at this point, he's all in at this point. So he's releasing these policies as it's pertinent or as it's relevant, and we're getting to see exactly what his platform is. So all last year, he was playing his cards pretty close to the chest. He was being intentionally vague because he knew what the liberals would do, because they did it. They're literally, you know, and they were demonizing him for saying that the carbon tax should go away, demonizing him for the capital gains.
Well, and could you imagine if 2 years ago, Pierre Poilievre had said to the public, well, our immigration numbers are too high. We need to cut immigration, and we need to cut it dramatically.
Yeah, the liberals would have branded him a racist and completely gone after him and the conservatives.
100%. But you can say those things now, because not only are they true, but I think the whole attitude of Canadians has come around so that Canadians realize that, yeah, our government was really irresponsible with our immigration numbers, and they let in more people than our system could sustain. So people are ready to hear it now.
Half the battle in messaging and communication and public relations is timing.
In politics especially.
Right.
All these things, axing taxes, building homes, unleashing construction of our resources, fixing the budget, stopping crime, all of these things were conservative fixations before the tariffs. Now they are even more necessary. But none of these things have happened in the last 100 days since Trump first launched his tariff threats. Look behind me. Parliament has been closed. Liberals shut it down to focus on their political battles. So the job-killing carbon tax is still in place. The sales tax is still in place on new homes. The No New Pipelines law still in place. The massive inflationary deficits still in place. Not one law has been changed. Not one tax has been cut. Not one action has been taken to free us from the grip of Trump and the U.S. We need change, and we will get change. It will be tough. Building Canada was tough, and so are Canadians. We will bring home the country we know and love and restore its promise. Canada will be self-reliant, sovereign, and stand on its own 2 feet. We will build on the great legacy and vision of John A. Macdonald of uniting our country east to west. We'll reward work, unleash entrepreneurs, harvest resources, make our own goods, trade with each other, build homes for our youth, rebuild our borders and military, honor our history, and raise our flag. What binds us together is the Canadian promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful house on a safe street, protected by solid borders and brave troops under a proud flag. To preserve that flag and its promise, we must work together, fight together, and win together. That is what it means to put Canada first, because Canada is worth fighting for our people, for our land, for our home, for our country. Let's bring it home.
This is the kind of leadership that you want in a prime minister.
Yeah, and it's okay to be patriotic. And I know all of you believe that. This is more to the people that have been tearing our patriotism down for the last 10 years. It's okay to be patriotic. It's good to be patriotic. It's good to be proud of your country. But we have been told by the mainstream media, by far left ideologues, that that's somehow politically incorrect.
Well, because it was built by bad people. Isn't that the narrative
Oh,
that
yeah.
they're giving us? I don't think we should be ashamed of our history. We should understand what happened, why it happened, and how to do better going forward. And we should be proud of our country because Canada was built on Western values where everyone is equal, where everyone can do whatever they want. Like, you're not born a king or a pauper. You're born a Canadian, and you can do anything that you want with your life. And that, I think, is true Western values.
Well, and this is what Pierre wants to try and bring back. So, like, let's get on with it. Seriously. And I don't know. This is the guy I want to vote for. I don't agree with everything he says.
But I agree with that.